Okay, so today we're talking about NAT. And for the next, I don't know, 5 or 6 lectures, I want to talk about NAT, Network Address Translation. And just got like before we did the last chapter on DHCP, where I made the relationship to a landlord and tenants and you lease addresses. I want to make some similar relationships here, not landlord and tenant, but before you even get into the pictures and the language and so forth of network address translation, I want you to just think about the labeling because this one's pretty accurate. It's about address translation. Something is going to take the IP address that you have or your device has or is assigned to you, and they're going to make it, the router is going to make it look like some other address. It's going to translate your address into some other address that's acceptable to the outside world. Okay? It's like an identity change. It's not an identity theft because an assignment is made and a log is kept and keep track of. It's not that. But it is a transfer of identity from, say, the particular address you're used to. In our case in DKI, we would have 166, 122, 132, and then some number between 0 and 127. Okay, because that's the pool of DHCP addresses that are assigned to us, and we have a few of them that are fixed. We all know this. To the outside world, maybe those addresses are not going to be transferred. Maybe they're going to be translated into some other whole network segment, some other whole group of addresses that might not even begin with 166. In fact, they probably don't. They might have 198 or 200 or something like that. Could easily be that. The term network address translation really refers to, I have one network that I live in. Here's my neighborhood, local network, right? Local area network. Here's my neighborhood. And here's the whole city, okay? And somehow, because we built a lot, for whatever reasons, the addresses in my neighborhood were not acceptable in the city. But we know each other, and we know everybody well, and we've got this system. We've got our neighborhood managed. But when we go outside, right, only certain addresses are going to be recognized. It's not about being acceptable or unacceptable. It's the outside world wants to recognize something else, the outside network. So you're going to hear terms like inside and outside, inside our network and outside our network. Okay? And then when we get more detailed and specific with the language, you're going to see that the inside network is, those addresses are going to be referred to locally. This is how we know each other. This is a local one. Now when you get out here in the outside world, something's global. So I'll go over these. You'll hear this kind of maybe me with my hands, but you won't see the hands, but you'll see me drawing on the pictures. But that's what's happening. We're actually going to translate the addresses in our comfort zone to a different set of addresses to go outside to the world. The world has a different way of relating, different comfort zones. Okay, so you know you'll get used to it. But I want you to think. I want you to be aware. This is not hard. It's not something sneaky or complex or just an extra game to be played. Obviously, this got started because the IPv4 addresses didn't have enough. We didn't have enough outside addresses. We didn't have enough global addresses to handle everything all the time. So we made another set of addresses that can handle all the global communication. Okay, we just picked some out of the whole group of IPv4 addresses. And now we don't give, like, they don't give the DKI Tech Building 128 addresses to work with a new prefix. They don't do that. They only give us a handful of addresses to work with, maybe 10. In some of the examples you'll see there's only 5. So that means a local address has to be mapped into a global address, and sometimes we might have to wait, right? So there's going to be restrictions that come up, limitations. Network address translation is more limited than direct addressing, because if there's a lot of local people who want to get out into the globe, they have to wait for an address to become available. Okay, so enough said with the hand waving and that. I want to get into the slides, but I wanted you to have at least a few notions here of where this is coming from and the kind of thing that's going to go on. So here we are with the slides, and I'll try to mark these up as we go as necessary, but there's 3 sections here that we're going to cover. Got a little confused, and here they are. The first section is about the protocols, so I'll put more discussion on the hand waving that I just did. Then we have to configure these things. And the thing I want you to notice about the second comment in each of these is the protocols, they address the scalability of the small network into a medium-sized or larger network. It's scaling, right? You can't have enough addresses that are always available to you. Configuring, this is about an edge router. How do we configure it so that it manages an outside pool of addresses against an inside pool of addresses and the demands to cross that boundary? And then the troubleshooting issues are really kind of the same techniques you've seen before. Okay, so let's talk about operation. Okay, so here's the picture of my hand waving. And some of the names now start to appear, right? We've got these internal networks right here. Internal. This is you. This is the DKI Tech Building. And then we've got an external network, or we'll just call it the internet because that's what's labeled here. Now notice, here's the thing that's being talked about. The external piece that you want to connect to, that's the public stuff. That's the label we're giving to it. It's public. The stuff that's inside DKI Tech, that's private. We have ways to keep it in there. The one who negotiates all this is the border router right here. So things are inside to the left, outside or public to the right. Okay, now this down here is a link. I'm not going to use it. You have a simple description, a video description of this if you want to go for it in your own slides. But so you're going to start to see these notations of public and private. So what is NAT? I'm going to state it like in words, the kind of things I've done with hand waving. It's a process, and it translates IPv4 addresses. That's the principal use, is IPv4. We got tons of addresses in IPv6. We can, kind of spit them all over the place. The purpose of NAT is to conserve public addresses. So if I go back to this picture, it's like, I'm worried about this address space. If I take all of these addresses and map them straight throughout into the public, what did I say we have here? We've got 128 addresses. That's 128 that I'd have to have out here. I don't have them to give, says the public. I don't have them to give. So you don't get that. Maybe I'll give you a 5 or 10. Okay, and you'll have to figure out which ones. The router is going to have to figure out who over here gets to go over here and when. All right, so that's an effort to conserve public addresses, which is a bunch of subsets of the global run of addresses, and that all gets configured at the border router. So here's some private address space. Now go back and look at these. This is a mask of 8, so you're only looking at the 10. All of this is available, right? Whatever that is, 3 bytes. So 2 to the 8, 16, 24, 2 to the 24 addresses. Here's another group of private address space with a 12, so that's a smaller group, and here's a 16, but these are still very large. You recognize this, you see it quite a bit. You go out and do IP traces and stuff, you'll see this combo come up quite often. All right, so there's our picture. These are available over here as private addresses. Okay, and the public ones we haven't talked about yet. Okay, so pros and cons. There's some clear advantages, otherwise they wouldn't have conceived the idea. It conserves the legally registered address scheme, right? Conserves the legally registered. That means the ones that have been assigned, like static, like we have in a DKI, right? Or even the ones out on the network. It conserves those because those only have to relinquish, those only have to create a bunch of small pools that people can communicate through. It's sort of like a manifold almost, or scaling down the pipeline. Increases flexibility of connections to the public network, right? Connections to the public. You don't even need the word network, just connections to the public. It increases the flexibility of that. Fewer addresses can service more people because you only give them a public address when they need it, when they need to talk publicly. As long as they're privately, save the address for someone who needs it. There's consistency then of internal network addressing schemes. We have that in the DKI Tech building. Here's one that I'm mentioning now for the first time. It provides some network security, right? Your personal identity in DKI Tech, the DHCP assigned to you, doesn't appear outside if NAT is in place. It doesn't appear outside. So your identity is sort of masked, right? You can think of it as camouflage if you want. But that is what's happening. Here's some of the disadvantages of NAT. Okay, these things have to be negotiated. So it's going to require TCP and negotiation type stuff. So remember, TCP and UDP are the two setup and negotiating protocols or ports. They each have an assigned port. These are the ones, and TCP is the more costly one because it contains a lot more information. Okay, things pertinent to the communication negotiation. So that means there's a lot more back and forth. Back and forth in the negotiation. So that gives an opportunity for them to be disrupted. People can be hacking, they can be watching. The end-to-end functionality is degraded, right? And why is this? One reason right off the top is the bandwidth is shared, right? I don't get access every time I want it, every time I think about it, right? That's field of dreams thinking. If I think it, I will get to do it. No, not this way. It has to be shared. End-to-end traceability is lost We like those trace functions. Traceability is lost because your identity and who knows how many other networks this is going on with, translations are taking place. Those are all translated, so they get lost. Tunneling, which we talked about, is still there, but it becomes more complicated, right? Because the addresses, they get a little harder to line up those addresses. So overall performance is degraded. I mean, this is the certain bottom line. And you would hope that's the summary statement, is weighed off against things like security and protection inside. Okay? So let me just go through some terminology so we start to get some of the terms on the table, and then we'll take a break and come back and talk about the particular kinds of network address translation. So here we go. You're used to seeing this. I'm inside, I'm PC1, and I've got that local address. And I want to talk to this server. Where is he? He's over here. I want to talk to this server. I need the web server to get that address. So I plug it into my packet, and I'm off and running. Okay? And what happens? Well, the packet got stopped at the border. Okay? And the inside address, so now we're getting some terms here you got to watch. Inside and outside are two of the terms. Okay? And anything that refers to the inside, even when I translate the address, is still inside. So what happened? The guy over here, the web server, he's not subject to network address translation. The network address translation is going this way, NAT. Okay? So the destination was a true address. It stayed the same. Okay? What happened was the inside address, me, you, PC1, you got changed. Your address got changed to something 209.165.200.226. We don't know how that happened. It just happened in this router. Okay, so the router now has this table. Your address when you're inside is this. And we call that inside local. Right? There you are. That's the exact address you were given at birth. Okay? When you cross the NAT boundary, you're given a new address. This. 226. Okay? So once you cross the boundary, you're now known as 209.165.200.226. This is not the address of the serial port. No. It is the address of the packet. It's the address of you. Okay? So to the outside world, you are now known as 209.165.200.226. And you wander around in the outside network. So this is called your global address. When you leave, if we had NAT, DKI Tech, you'd be given a global address, and that's who you are as long as your packets are out there. Okay? Once they come back inside, we know they're going to be translated back, and that outside identity is dissolved. And next time you go out, you'll have an outside identity, but it might not be the same one. Okay? We'll talk about that when we do implementation. The web server, on the other hand, he's in the outside network, right? So here it is, outside. But he's outside local. So this would be comparable to the inside local. This is him, right here. This is the address given at birth to the web server. When the web server goes outside, there's no translation. So the global address looks like The global address looks like the local address. So you got these two terms that kind of cross each other. Inside and outside, those are network terms. And local and global, those are address terms. And these are the four possibilities that you can have. Now let's follow this through a little more. There's what I said. That inside local got transformed to that inside global. And they kept the color scheme to help us out there. Now when the server responds, it makes up the standard packet. Where am I at here? It makes up the standard packet. The source, boy, nothing changes there, because he's not in a translation path. But he's going to send a response to you, but he doesn't know you as anything other than 209.165.200.226. Boring Bob is known as 209.165.200.226. It isn't until I cross the threshold that I regain my own identity. 192.168.10.10. Outside guy is still the same because no translation took place. Now why would that be? You'd translate in one direction but not the other. And the problem is, or the answer is a simple one. This is the inside network. In DKI there's 128 addresses. This is the outside network, and he may have to talk to a lot of other people. So he's only assigning to us 10 addresses. He's only assigning 10 addresses to us. And it's up to us to manipulate those and make them work just right. Okay? So that's how that has to go, and that's why. So he doesn't need to go this way. We don't need a net translation in this. We don't need that. Because we got plenty of addresses, we only handed out 10. The router that borders us to the inside network has to manage them because there's 128. Okay, so only 10 addresses can be used to cross the line. All right, so that's kind of what's going on there. There's the my little moniker to show what happens. The only thing that got translated was the inside stuff. Got translated from inside global. Okay, I'm going to quit here for this number one, and there'll be another one coming for beginning to build what types of NAT are there. There's more than one way to do this, and as you might guess, they go from simple to extra. Okay, but I'll be back with that in lecture 2.